Working at UVTV, motherfucker. I'm here to kick spiritual ass and do this for my people. On God. Neon nigga for feather me in. Today I'm going to be talking about how all races have an ace quality about them. But other than that, that don't make them supreme humans overall or make them feel like they're connected to some supreme being, at least in that shape and form. At least in that way, which really ain't no shape or form at all. It's really just you turning nothing into something. But that nothing you trying to turn into something, you're making that shit not an overall parameter or some shit like that. You're not trying to make it relatable. You're not actually being in sync. You're not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not trying to make it so that it can involve everybody. You're just trying to make a space or a culture or some productivity or creativity that only you and your people can win in, but you can't make a space or make some type of intuitive outlook to where everyone can see that viewpoint, everyone can see that outlook, and you can make that relative to you know what I'm saying, to make it like a world view, a worldly view. You viewing it the way the world will look at it, but the whole world could be a part of it too. So it start turning into, oh, you got your own culture, your own creativity, your own productivity, or how you go about it. We can also talk about it in a way to where it can be relative even to motherfuckers who not really into that thing like that, and it can make them get interested in stuff like that because they look at that as like a skill or like a talent or like a creativity or like a new type of individuality, a new type of self-expression and shit like that, some new type of fruitful type of energy and shit like that, not no demonic low-hanger fruit or some shit like that. So I'm saying that to say, end of the day, everyone has their own expert qualities and stuff like that, but from an overall perspective, it don't make you some supreme human being or some shit like that. And I'm gonna bring up a perfect example to really illustrate that shit, right? So based upon the sun pockets and the atmosphere in the sky that we in and stuff like that, and then we walking emanations of what that is, of motherfuckers trying to be celebrities and walking stars and walking atmospheres and shit like that, and walking celestial heavenly beings and stuff like that. You couldn't even get to that point unless you know how to make a heaven out of a hell in some way, shape, and form. Right? So from you making that heaven out of a hell, you know how to take the circumstances you in and you still know how to make it blissful. You still can be in that space and be creative. You ain't gonna let that turn you dense. You ain't gonna let that fold you. You ain't gonna let that not make you stand on the legs you want to stand on when it comes to your legacy and that dream and imagination you trying to admit, and you still know how to be yourself even if a million motherfuckers in front of you, even if you got a million haters or some shit like that. You're just gonna use that as fuel and gas to get from point A to B to C to the promised land or some shape or form, right? So based upon you going through those different experiences and highs and lows and the different low and high vibrations to make it make sense in some shape or form, right? You have to be riding that stream of consciousness in that frequency to stay in that line of event to make it work in your favor. And you have to understand that not everyone is like there is no such thing as no perfect being, right? Even like with the way when y'all look at God, even though y'all look at God like a deity, but I'm not going to get into that today, right? Because God is just all possibilities, all of creation, all of existence. So we make that matter. We make it what it is. We make that mentality, that thought and form to get that adrenaline and that fruitful type of energy out of it so it can make it so we can experience that into the physical based upon us being in the material physical realm right now and shit like that, right? So the only way things gonna go through like the natural transition of things going to like the next step, right? Kind of like when people be saying allegories and shit like that, like you can't move forward or you can't go to the future or have that foresight or play out that vision unless you go through the things based upon your past, and then learning how to have patience to live in the present, because patience and being in the present is a virtue and a principle. And if you don't know how to live in the present, you can't know how to see where that train of thought or that vision or that dream or imagination you trying to be a walking emanation of, or be the walking example of how you see yourself, and make that the new representation of what some shit look like, even if it don't make sense in the physical shape and form yet. You're gonna be willing to put yourself first, to put yourself in that leadership position to show the potentiality of what that could be. And that's, you know what I'm saying, people who have a lot of foresight or vision of where they see themselves and stuff like that, and they able to stay in that straight and narrow and shit like that. They ain't letting too many things sidetrack them. They gonna stay right there on that line of reason of that creativity and that productivity, but they make it not something that already got created and they get created into some type of program or some type of mental slavery or some type of fear monger or some type of delusion that they feel like is a part of their imagination in some way, shape, or form, right? So on a basic level, because I'm trying to make this on an even playing field, right? Y'all don't be applying, because I feel like this is just a failure of the human mind in so much shape or form, because we have so much intelligence, or we have so much awareness, conscious, subconscious awareness, compared to other sentient beings at the moment, because we're like, we came before that based upon evolution and stuff like that. But that's a different video in itself. But based upon the evolution and scale of how many different experiences and how many different shapes and forms and bodies that we done made for ourselves, from learning how to go through these different experiences that have our own individualistic things that our soul go through, so we can add more scars to, or like add more skin in the game or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you went through more experiences and mental resilience based upon your own personal perspective, based upon the spaces that you put yourself in, and your individual spirit, your individual space, your individual creativity, and your individual productivity of your subjective point of view is just your soul. And then the spirituality of it is just putting yourself in many different spaces. You just know how to react and respond being in different spaces with your individualistic point of view. So look at that as you have your own subjective point of view, and all of us together as humans making our different subjective point of views, we make the objective point of view and the overall space that we all in and stuff like that. And then that space or that spirit turns into a mind, and a mind is our light body, is our first body, and it comes into shapes and forms, because our spirit is no space. So from it being no shape and form, we're turning nothing into something. We turn it into a thought, we turn it into a vision, we turn it into an idea, we turn it into a feeling, then it accumulate into an emotion and feeling based upon manifesting, materializing, manifesting men and women, the masculine and feminine energies that we have, externalizing and internalizing, and we able to craft that into a shape and form, into us having blood, adrenaline, veins, and organs, and brains, and eyeballs, and the physical shape and form we in right now. We're just doing that on a more expanded, broader scale when it comes to awareness, compared to other sentient beings like animals and bugs and things you see in nature and shit like that, right? I feel like this is just a failure of the human mind based upon humans in general having some type of ego superiority complex, and they began lost in the mind of that same progression that you had to go through when you went through those different experiences based upon reincarnation. You know what I'm saying? And you being in other sentient beings, you being a pig at one point, you being an ego at one point, you being a mountain lion. So that's based upon, we can take on those different characteristics of those different animals and species and stuff like that. We're just at a point to where, oh, we're in a humanistic body, so we was able to go beyond just those things. That's why a lot of time when it comes to like symbolism and stuff like that, when it comes to a lot of these spiritual practices or religions and stuff like that, that's why they'll make allegories towards those things, because we were those things at one point. So from us being a human right now is one of those things where it's like, oh, thank God, thank all possibilities that I'm a human right now, and I'm not no alligator, or I'm not no insect, I'm not no ant, I'm not no fly, I'm not no mountain lion no more, I'm not no alligator, I'm not no crocodile, I'm not no fish, I'm not no marine life animal or some shit like that. And I was able to come out the water to be some new mammal land creature or some shit like that, not no fucking monkey, because clearly we're on a different scale when it comes to gorillas and monkeys and shit like that, and chimpanzees, despite the fact, oh, we both have mammal like traits, but based upon that mammal like distinction of us comparing, contrasting, we still don't think like a fucking monkey though. You know what I'm saying? Like, we able to outsmart a monkey, not the other way around. Like, so based upon the different geographical locations that we are in, right, it produces different creatures on the land. So that's why in America and shit like that, it'd be certain bugs and insects and animals based upon their environment in the surrounding and the sun pocket and the seasonal transition in that area, to why certain species come out during on that type of land. That's why it'd be Pacific species of animals that only exist on certain continents and stuff like that. So if we were to talk about polar bears, I mean, not polar bears, if we were to talk about bears and shit like that, oh, okay, you're gonna see this type of bear in America compared to this type of bear in Antarctica or some shit like that, which is gonna be a polar bear, and then a certain type of bear that you're gonna see in Africa that only get born in Africa, and then you have a certain type of bear that's gonna be in Asia that you're only gonna see in Asia, or a certain type of, you know what I'm saying? Like, but at the end of the day, all these motherfuckers are still what? Bears. They're still Care Bears and shit like that. They're still We Bear Bears and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? They still bears. It is born on different geographical location based upon their surrounding environment, in the geographical location, in the ecosystem, in the ecology and shit like that. So right? From the starting point, okay, what you think humans be doing and stuff like that, and get marginalization, get colonization, get capitalism, get the shit that we made based upon civilization and different cultures and society and shit like that. Get that out your mind, even though we did make them cultures, but like, get that out your mind when it comes to your bias for a second, right? Because I know motherfuckers gonna be watching this and they think I'm saying some pseudo shit, but it still applies because we see this in life just in general. So the same way how I just said, they're all still bears, but they're born on different geographical locations based upon the space, the time, and the matter, based upon the ecosystem and the surrounding environment that's naturally on that father sky and motherland, based upon that atmosphere, right? That sphere at most, that world at most, that orb at most, that space at most, and the motherland and the nature naturally that produces while on that land based upon that continent and shit like that, right? So that's the same shit with snakes, right? It's gonna be certain species of snake that's only gonna be seen in Africa. There's certain species of snakes that's only gonna be seen in Asia. There's certain species of snake that's only gonna be seen in the Americas and stuff like that, right? Why y'all think that don't apply to humans? You go to Asia on a highest percentage scale, you're gonna see Asians. Yes, motherfuckers be fucking and they be mixing and mingling, and they might go fuck someone who's not part of their family, aka like a foreigner or some shit like that, based upon, you know what I'm saying? Love is love, right? And they make different mixed breeds and shit like that. The same way how y'all be mixing breeds when it comes to different dogs and shit like that. They play this out during slavery and stuff like that when it comes to eugenics and shit like that. And them thinking, oh, this can make a new type of human if we mix them together to make this type of hair texture and this type of phenotype and this type of eyeball and this type of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same type of rhetoric they was doing in the fucking 1800s based upon slavery and shit like that, and why they was sitting there thinking Africans and you know what I'm saying, like African Americans was like dumb as fucking shit like that because they have certain things based upon eugenics when it comes to their skull and they you know what I'm saying, like bro, like, it's like the same shit you saw in that movie, the Django and shit like that. I forgot what that shit called, but like, y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about based upon eugenics, and they thinking, oh, they're like born like that, they're born dumb as fuck based upon some scientific studies and them trying to deconstruct and dissect motherfucking humans like frogs and shit like that, and then they justifying it based upon, they just trying to rule based upon colonization and the new age capitalism and shit like that, right? So boom, like I just said, right, on a higher percentage scale, you go to Asia, you're gonna see Asians. A high percentage scale, when you go to Africa, you're gonna see Africans and Berbers and Arabs and shit like that, even though they are the same thing. If you go to Europe on a higher percentage scale, you're going to see Europeans, right? And then you go to the Americas and shit like that, regardless of the fact y'all did some colonization and brought a whole bunch of different foreigners on boats and stuff like that, including me and my family and shit like that. But hey, we here now, y'all trying to make it into a big ass melting pot. The highest percentage scale you're gonna see is Native Americans. It just got mixed and mingled to what today y'all be talking about when it comes to Dominicans or goddamn like Cubans or some Mexican or some Taino and shit like that. They're just the descendants of that. They just got mixed and mingled, or a little Spaniard there, or a Portuguese motherfucking mixed breed there, an Afro-Latino motherfucker mixed there and shit like that, some Asian, Mexican, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all mixed and mingled, but at the end of the day, based upon that different phenotype and genotype in the gene pool and stuff like that, in that percentage scale, right, you're gonna see based upon that what they're gonna end up taking more of, because it's either you're mixed or you're just more higher on the percentage scale of just that and shit like that. Because my ancestors came from Nigeria and stuff like that, and despite the fact I'm sniffling like hell and shit like that, it's cold out today, but yeah, but based upon that, kind of like with me and my ancestors, right, the starting point was motherfuckers from Nigeria and Nigerians and stuff like that. And it's either you're gonna be Afro-Asiatic, right, African Asiatic, or Afro like European or some shit like that, or like mixed breed with like a white person and stuff like that. So on a higher percentage scale, right, I'm still African, right? But based upon the people in my family and who they chose to have sex with and who they chose to fuck and stuff like that, and things of that nature, right? You can tell based upon like the skin texture and like the eyes and stuff like that, and like the hair growth and shit like that. Kind of like when I have like 4C hair, but you know what I'm saying? Like I have 4C hair, but I'm like light skinned because based upon these different skin complexions and shit like that. I forgot the word they call that shit. But based upon the different skin complexion and shit like that, right? You have light skin and dark skin Africans, right? The same way you can have Europeans and shit like that. It's gonna be some on a more lighter shade, and there's gonna be some on a more darker shade. But at the end of the day, there's still a high percentage scale European, or they just mix. Is either you mix with two different gene pools and it's gonna turn into a biracial type thing, or you're just fully that. You just took over way more of that on a higher percentage scale and shit like that. So based upon my own lineage and shit like that, right? And based upon who they was fucking, it was only other black people and Africans and stuff like that from both sides. And then here and there, you're gonna get a white person or some European and shit like that, either based upon raping and pillaging, or just based upon, you know what I'm saying, somebody in my family was fucking some white people. But other than that, you know what I'm saying, like there's a whole lineage and shit like that go back to like Europeans and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? There's a section of them that was fucking on white people and stuff like that. So I just took more the percentage scale of the African side because I was born by two black parents and stuff like that, two African parents in a sense. We just African American, but I'm more of the lighter skin complexion. But the reason why that is in the first place, right, is because of what the fuck I'm talking about right now. So based upon when the people who was from Africa and shit like that, the Nigerians, from my ancestry and things of that nature, right? And who they was fucking with and mixing, mingling with, it don't necessarily have to be Asians, but it was around motherfuckers who was more Asiatic and stuff like that. That's why the my eyes and like my lighter skin complexion, it is what it is today and stuff like that. And why people before me, like my mama and stuff like that, they'll probably have a more looser hair type and hair texture and shit like that, because I got dreadlocks and my shit more 4C, and my mom's hair is more coarse. It's more like looser than mine and stuff like that. Like if she tried to get dreads, it's not gonna look like mine. You know what I'm saying? Like she can get dreads, but I'm saying based upon the hair texture is not the same. You get what I'm saying? And then even with like my grandma and stuff like that, it was I'm like, my hair texture would be more akin to my grandma's, but my mom's hair texture is completely different. And you know what I'm saying? Like that's the reason why though. It's about the percentage scale based upon the gene pool of how much you took and stuff like that. So on a higher percentage scale, yeah, we African and stuff like that, but who did you fuck and stuff like that? And then we're gonna start taking on those gene traits from those type of people and stuff like that. So even if you take race out of it, right, that's like when like the mother and the father, they get together and end up fucking with each other and they have a kid, and then the kid either look like more like the mama, or the kid either look more like the father or some shit like that. So I'm using that to make more sense. I don't look like my dad at all. I look like a spit image of my mom and stuff like that. That's why I have such a like a feminine face and shit like that. So it's literally the same thing. I'm just applying it when it comes to that, when it comes to the gene shit and shit like that. It's the same thing. Oh, I took more traits from my mother's side and her ancestry and who they was fucking to make it so we have that lineage of what we have now. And I'm just a descendant of what they was doing when they was ascending into that and when they was fucking each other and stuff like that. So like, yeah. So I'm applying that same line of reasoning and logic when it comes to, oh, on different geographical locations and stuff like that, and how y'all be doing with dogs and mixed breeds and things of that nature. They're still fucking dogs. So at the end of the day, we're still human. We just have our different ethnicities and geographical location that we got born on, and different cultures and stuff like that. So there is no such thing as an overall supremacy, because the same way how we see that with animals, okay, it's the same thing with humans. Y'all just have to get out of that colonist type of mind state and stuff like that, that pilgrim type of mind state, and start thinking more like that. Like from an overall space, that's what you see. Oh, you're going to see Asians on a higher percentage scale in Asia. Oh, you're going to see a higher percentage scale of Africans in Africa. You're going to see a higher percentage scale of Native Americans in the Americas. They just got mixed and mingled and gene pool, melting pot, and colonized, and you know what I'm saying? Like it's in all that. It's really just all that. It's shit like that that make y'all confused and stuff like that. Like, oh, that's not what's going on, when that is what's going on. You see that in reality. So it's never been nothing else but that. The same way how, oh, you're going to see certain bears in certain geographical locations, like a polar bear or a koala bear or a grizzly bear, but they're all still fucking bears. You get what I'm saying? So based upon that, they got their own little kit of being a type of bear, but they're still all one of a kind in a bear-like way. So we're all still one of a kind as humans, as mankind. We're just different types of humans. That's it. Look at that as different species and stuff like that. Different ethnicities, different races, different phenotypes. It's just those main four right there. And then it starts to get into, if I want to talk about this in a religious type of aspect and how they look at it, a different denomination. It's different denominations and subsectors of that. So that's how it turns into, oh yeah, I'm African, but what type of African are you? What tribe are you from and shit like that? Like, what country are you from? Oh, you have different tribes and cultures of the Nigerians and the Sudanese and Kenyan and Berbers and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing. Oh, you're from Europe. You're European. Oh, what type though? What culture? Oh, I'm German. Oh, I'm Swedish. Oh, I'm Norwegian or some shit like that. It's the same shit. It's the same thing. Y'all just be trying to, it's like y'all get lost into nationality terms. Yeah, it's really that. Yeah, it's like y'all get lost into nationality terms, and then y'all try to conflate it into race and ethnicity when they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. It's on nationality terms. A nation got brought out of it, but it's not their ethnicity. It's just the culture they was raised up under, but that culture had to get created. But that's not your race or ethnicity. That's just the nation you got brought up under, based upon your ancestors, and you just a descendant of that. That's it. Like, that's it. Like, so it's the same shit when it comes to classes and shit like that. If I want to make another example to make that make sense and shit like that. Okay, there's people who are part of aristocracy or elite, or they was born rich and they got brought up based upon nepotism, right? And then you have the middle class, and then you have poor people and low class and shit like that, right? But just because you was born in that classification, that don't mean you're gonna be poor in spirit. You can be the richest motherfucking got $1 million in the world. You can't take none of that shit with you the minute you dead and shit like that, because money had to get created, right? And we make that the value, right? But you could be poor in spirit, but you rich as fuck. So you can give that motherfucker $1 million, but if the mind ain't right, he ain't gonna know what to do with the fucking $1 million and shit like that. He gonna waste on a whole bunch of bullshit and Jeffrey Epstein and Hugh Hefner or some shit like that. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like, bro, it's really that simple. And a motherfucker can be poor as hell, but that don't mean they broke spiritually. They can be rich in spirit. They creative as fuck. They productive as fuck. They got the hustling mentality and shit like that, and they gonna get it how they live and shit like that. They just happen to be from that geographical location and surrounded in an environment to where they grew up in the hood, or they grew up as a street nigga. But they can take those principalities and apply it into a better way to where it helps them be a better hustler, or it makes them be even more creative because they never had it like that. So they're gonna find a way to take that little shit they got and make that shit look like it's fucking amazing and shit like that. That's why motherfuckers who be from the hood or be from the street or grew up poor or grew up in the hood or some shit like that, that's why, or grew up in the ghetto or some shit like that, they be like the most like common person who be having the most fun type shit, just based upon the type of like shit and experiences and circumstances they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it gives them more mental resilience compared to motherfuckers who part of some aristocracy and shit like that. And the only motherfuckers who going to understand that is if they was either suburban or middle class or poor. They just happen to become a millionaire and stuff like that, so they understand the grind of getting there compared to a motherfucker who just there. So if you already just there, that's why it result in situations where they utilize their nepotism to do hood or street shit or associate with those people who are more of a lower class, because it feel like they don't have to work as hard to go through nothing. They feel like they can experience certain things, and they want to learn how to do it in their own way without the nepotism aspect behind it and shit like that. So that's how it start resulting into motherfuckers like Lil Mabu or some shit like that. Like, no, but that ass though, like, that's why it ends up in scenarios like that. So it's like, oh, I got little Jimmy into the good school, into the good college, into Harvard, into Yale, and all that type shit. And it's like, this motherfucker don't appreciate that shit. Nigga, that's why. That's why. Because the motherfucker not living life. He's living a life that you already constructed for him. And it's like, yeah, you have the financial literacy and you have the financial privileges to do what you want when it comes to the material world and shit like that. But you ain't got no spirit, or you got no creativity. You don't got no imagination to make something more fruitful in a better way to make it so you can build yourself up and create and cultivate something for yourself. You just under some shit that got created for you instead of you making it. And if that motherfucker who end up becoming a rich motherfucker ain't no, like, if they ain't caring about that productivity or that creativity, and they ain't getting too lost into the, I'll say, the riches and shit like that, and they ain't teaching them how to be in that hustler type mentality and shit like that, then that's how their kids can end up being degenerates, even though they did all degenerative things to make them not be a degenerate. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So it's really just that. Motherfuckers just need to get raised up the right way and stuff like that. But niggas be on faulty principles and virtues and shit like that, and fault belief systems or some shit like that, or false ways of how to go about things. So they were just in the illusion of how they're supposed to go about it, and then everyone has their own individualistic way of how they go about it. So that may have worked for you, but your kids have their own mind. They're not you. Yes, they came from you, and you brought them into this existence and stuff like that based upon you know what I'm saying, from like you fucking who their mother was, or you fucking who their father was and shit like that, but they're still not you. So they're still part of your lineage based upon ancestry and shit like that, but they're gonna have their own creativity. They're gonna have their own individuality. They're gonna have their own mind. They're gonna have their own outlook. So unless you know how to build with your kid, even though you're still a parent, you're still the adult and shit like that, if you don't know how to learn like the right way, how to teach them and raise them up the right way from you being the parent, and then you not learning how to adapt, because kids be teaching their parents shit in certain ways and be humbling their parents in certain ways that they don't be expecting, because they're still a kid. So they're more tapped into, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not as indoctrinated and stuff like that. All their chakras be fully open. And you know what I'm saying? Like, they be way more in a childlike spirit, because they're literally a fucking child. They're way more in a youthful type spirit. It's not to say adults can't be youthful or be in their inner child or be in that type of energy and shit like that. I'm saying they're more closer to that because it's like a baby being born type shit. You know what I'm saying? So like, they're not in society, in the structure and rules of how shit set up that other men created and stuff like that. They don't give a fuck about that. They just way more into their authenticity and the first thing that comes to their mind and shit like that. So that's why kids can be assholes, but they also can be some of the most cherishable motherfuckers ever and shit like that. The most creative, imaginative motherfuckers. Like, you wanna, like, motherfuckers gotta cherish that shit and protect that shit. That's why they come up with analogies like protect the men and women and shit, like, I mean, protect the children and the women and shit like that. That's where that allegory be coming from and shit like that. So it's like, yeah. So based upon everyone having their own ace up their sleeve, based upon the type of race they are part of, we're just different types of humans. So you can look at that as, to make this really simple, right? The Native Americans being more on a spiritual and the more spiritual side, and being a part of more all possibilities and doing things for the soul, and having their own individualistic space of how they go about it. And then you can look at Asians being more of the emotional intellect and shit like that. You can really tell this when it comes to, like, you can decipher it when you can tell based upon the religions they have and stuff like that. Because over there they'll have like Buddhism or Confucianism and shit like that, and Taoism and the yin and yang and stuff like that, and the Kung Fu Bruce Lee spirit and shit like that, and the way of the dragon, you know what I'm saying, or like Into the Dragon and shit like that. Like, you can tell based upon like their belief system and how they run shit over there, just in general. And that's why they kind of be closed off. Oh, they got their own news channels and stuff like that. They have their own type of media, and they got nothing to do with what's going on in America. When you in Asia, no, you're only gonna see Asian shit. You don't see them talking about other countries, like how they be doing it in America and shit like that. But that's a different video, right? And then you can look at Europeans or white people. You can look at them when it comes to the intellect. They're more left brain. So Asia will be more right brain. White people will be more left brain, logic and rationality and practicality, and having some type of intellect when it comes to having some type of language or word of how to describe something. So look at that as like the Age of Enlightenment or the scientific revolution or some shit like that. They always got some law, some legislation, writing some shit down type of quality about them and shit like that. And yeah, and then look at black people or Africans. They're more in the perspective of, they're more into the material fleshy world and shit like that. And I'm not trying to say that in a bad way, because, you know what I'm saying, like, there's high vibrational ways to go about it, and there's low vibrational ways of how to go about it and shit like that. And just because they're more into the materialistic gain of how they can get about something, aka, hey, I'm gonna sit there and get me an 80 ball, I'm gonna sit there, be all about my money and give me my bag and shit like that, right? So just in general, right, they're way more into like a monetary gain type perspective and shit like that. They're way more into growth and like nourishment and like earth-like qualities. Grounding something, you know what I'm saying? Being down to earth. Like, I don't give a fuck about it unless it has some money behind it. I don't give a fuck about it unless it has some business venture behind it and shit like that. I don't really give a fuck about it unless it has some type of foundation or some type of status I can get out of it, in some way, shape, or form. Especially when it comes to money and shit like that. So I'm not trying to say that Africans are super materialistic and hedonistic. I'm just saying that's the thing they're more good at and shit like that. That's why I be on some, oh yeah, you can be invited in the cookout if you know how to go no ball when it comes to our culture and the shit we done built up for each other, and black owned businesses and shit like that. That's why they be on that type of tip for the most part, and that's their ace. So from them having their own ace based upon the geographical culture and location they was born at and stuff like that, in their little pocket of the sun and shit like that, of what goes on in their atmosphere and their motherland and shit like that. So just look at that as the atmosphere of being that ethnicity and that race, and then the motherland being the physical attributes of physical actions and examples and attributes or talent or skill or gift that ethnicity be more willing to do naturally and what they organically know how to do and stuff like that. Those will be those different pockets of what they know how to do. And then like the more y'all know how to be in a teamwork, make the dream work type mentality, and we can come together as mankind, so we can have different one-of-a-kind ways and subjective point of views of our own personal perspective, how to go about it, and we can make a better overall space and bring all possibilities, all of creation, all of existence, all that potentiality, and bring God into, bring God on earth or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Bring heaven on earth for real and make that an actual dwelling and make that more the conversation instead of some New Jerusalem Zionism type of conversation and shit like that. But it's doing that for the whole world, not just a Pacific religion, not just a Pacific country, not just a Pacific worldview. No, we all got our own talents and gifts, and the same way how they do that in America and stuff like that, make it a big melting pot. Okay, we can make this the new world and shit like that. We can make this like, and not in like an American colonization type of way. Oh, we can just make this the new world. We can just make this like, you know what I'm saying? Like the same way how like when it came to like the Asia discovery and shit like that. Oh, the old world turned into the new world. Okay, I can make that look better in a better type way and stuff like that. So instead of it being, oh, just white men, examples of the Age of Enlightenment and Isaac Newton and shit like that and Albert Einstein and shit like that. No, it's many different races in different territories and different cultures and different people who can sit there and be that. Not just some white face Jesus Jesuit Christ or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So the more y'all know how to be in that perspective, the more we can actually evolve past being in this humanistic state of being and shit like that. And we can make something that's beyond just humans and shit like that. The same way how animals and dogs and cats, and we make them as pets, they would look at us like their deity or their God of a better way how to go about something. And humans do that when it comes to the atmosphere, because you still need to breathe, right? You need oxygen and shit like that, right? So that's what we doing inside the atmosphere we in right now. We're just trying to be something grander than that and be walking suns and be walking emanations, be walking stars and walking moons and walking atmospheres and walking celestial bodies and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? We just have to get there and get more spiritual and get more raising our consciousness, awareness and stuff like that, and stop getting lost into shit that already got created and actually give praise and providence and give that back pocket energy and actually really support that in a real authentic way of real talent and authenticity. Not trying to make a program some Monopoly mush-ass man top hat game that only they can win in based upon the system they set up. So that's why systematic racism be existing and shit like that, because just look at all the system and programs and the government, aka motherfuckers who like being the government mentality based upon their ancestors and shit like that, the way it's set up and shit like that. We don't got no thing to where like so that's where Africans in general, when it comes to black-owned businesses, where in that perspective they right, it's just they be wrong based upon the starting point and trying to do it in the black type way and stuff like that, and stop calling yourself black, because black is just based upon what they used to call Negroes and niggers and shit like that, and niggas is what they used to call Moors and stuff like that. So it's a name they gave y'all based upon English, Spaniard, European terminology, and we talking English right now, which is just England man language and stuff like that. We don't got our own language that only Africans can know, and English is a good global language so we all can understand each other and we can all interpret what the fuck we talking about. But y'all ain't got your own dictionaries and thesauruses and encyclopedias of your own synonyms and antonyms of your own phrases and prefixes and suffixes and vowels and all that type shit. Y'all still in English. But yeah, I'm just throwing ideas out there and shit like that. But from an overall perspective, yeah, stop being some low-hanging fruit bitch ass humans, and y'all going to keep on coming back and keep coming back to being more frustrated and being in hell and shit like that. And let's actually make some heaven on earth type shit. Oh God, like yeah, you have to get out your fucking biases so much and shit like that, and just get into a biased subjective point of view. Oh, the objective, oh, let's make it so every culture, every race and ethnicity can be fruitful, but their own subjective way and pocket how to do and come about that, and then we gonna bring all possibilities, aka God on earth for real, and not in a deity type way to where y'all just be lost into idol worship or some shit like that, because everyone gonna have their own little thing how to go about it, and then we're gonna have some godly laws and not get lost into fucking Constitution, American laws or some shit like that. So it's like overall, yeah, there's not no characteristic of being like some supreme being, because y'all just get lost into the body, aka the physical world, aka the flesh, and the tools and the technology and the external realm world that gets made from the flesh or some shit like that. Y'all have no creativity or productivity or overall space or spirituality about y'all, and y'all ain't nourishing y'all souls and be trying to protect y'all imagination, and y'all you know what I'm saying? Y'all ain't trying to actually have some space into that world and have some intellectual property into that world, into that space. And in a minute y'all try to do that, y'all just end up using everything that's on y'all mind for the flesh and like hedonism and low class, lower vibrational desires and shit like that. I'm not even trying to say you can't even practice that in or some shit like that, or like you can't do that. I'm just saying y'all get too lost in it though, and then it make y'all lost into y'all mind, so you can't tell where like, bro, like it just gonna turn into like some type of validation issue or some insecurity you're just trying to block, and you end up self-projecting everything you self-reflecting about and shit like that. So everything you self-reflecting about, you're gonna self-project what you think a motherfucker doing, but you the one who doing it, and you just in some type of fear-mongering program that you put on yourself that you can't actualize your potential and just be that, and you just gonna get so harsh on like the failures of what you didn't do when you could have did it and stuff like that. And instead of just being that now today and stuff like that, you getting lost into the past of what you was at one point, but you just getting lost into your peak, getting lost into your prime when you could have been your prime today, or you could have been your prime back then when you know you should have, but you was getting too lost into the narrative of how it's supposed to look like and shit like that. When the more you're able to come into that state of being able to actually come as yourself in authenticity and be vulnerable, no matter how the fuck it look like, but you're able to take the different lessons, the highs and lows that you can gain from it, that's having a whole bunch of different knowledge. And knowledge is knowledge, but the more you know how to know yourself and stuff like that, you're gonna know how to extract wisdom of how to say no to certain shit. And the minute you know how to say no to certain shit, right, you're gonna be more into no shape and form, aka God, all possibilities of being something, so you can do that the right way, so you can put yourself in a better space and creativity and productivity, so you know what fit you from your subjective point of view and what you can handle and what don't serve you and don't really help you from whatever goal of where you trying to go and shit like that. And you ain't gonna have no setback or some grudge, or you ain't gonna let some program or let some narrative of how a motherfucker look at you based upon their outlook stop you from your personal outlook and your passion or motivation of what make you get up in the morning to be inspired to do that shit again and shit like that. And then you able to keep on adding more expansion, contraction, expand out of a mind, and then contract into a new one and stuff like that, and then make some new type of fruit or new type of experience or new type of creativity or new type of thing that's refreshing. And you made that shit up and you did that and you cultivated that on your own, and everyone else who was in that same sentiment as you and stuff like that, who help you be into that space, y'all can only get some more and shit like that. And then you'll be more in the mentality of there's more where that came from, instead of being in that lack thereof energy and that validation issues type of energy and shit like that, and blaming another motherfucker of why you can't get your 1-2 together because they did this and they did that and they're blocking me from doing this and doing that and shit like that. Instead of being more into the activity, proactive, okay, yeah, you can react and respond when someone doing some bullshit, and you gonna sit there and you watch that, but God gonna take care of that and shit like that. And then it's gonna turn into, oh, they're gonna be the ones who's gonna be spiritually evaporating and shit like that, and you gonna be the one who still maintain that overall creativity space because you kept on trying to find different ways to hustle to make sure you stay there and you don't get knocked off your to make sure you don't get knocked off your square in some shape or form and shit like that. You don't let that stop you from being you from an overall perspective. And yeah, that's not no actuality of you being a supreme being, even going into that low vibrational bitch ass conversation on God. Y'all just bitch out monkey humans.